Hello and welcome once again to Cave of the Cross Apologetics. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Tony.
And we're on to the next chapter, our first tactic in Tactics by Greg Koukl. That sounds very, very
tactical.
Yeah, tactical. you gotta say it with a grit in your voice. You're going undercover.
That's right.
So today we're introducing our first tactic, which is called the Columbo tactic, and so we're going to be kind of introducing this. This first part is kind of the introduction, the why to use it, when to use it, and then we get into the kind of the three parts of it. So he really breaks it down in a good way, and it is very useful, I do have to say. Doing this book, I've when we started, I've interacted with someone who's a modalist, and that was interesting. And so utilizing can you just walk through John 1 without going to 16 other different ones? And it was calm, collective, had the conversation. Can you explain, with God and was God? Well, no, you got to go to different ones. And so, no one got angry. And so that was good.
Good. Yeah.
I did fail because someone believes that if you celebrate Christmas, you're a heretic. And that was an interesting one. He got frustrated, so I lost that one. So I'm 1 for 2 using the tactics. Obviously, I need to keep reading because if anyone gets angry, we lose or I lose. So I don't want to lose. Simple as that. So we're on chapter 3 called the Columbo tactics. This is part 1, the game plan of Greg Koukl's tactics. So if you're following along in the book, we are using the 10th anniversary edition. And so yours might just be different a little bit. And so he provides 4 scenes here, and we picked 2 of them because we thought that they were good introductions, and his answers were also good for these. So imagine, if you will, you're in the Twilight Zone, and you're at a dinner party, as we all are. Or, you're just out someplace, and you're with your close friends from church. Suddenly, to your surprise and embarrassment, your host's 15-year-old son announces with some belligerence that he doesn't believe in God anymore. It is simply not rational. He says there's no proof. You have no idea. He's been moving in this direction. There's a stunned silence. What do you say? I'm just going to eat the potato salad. And
that's right. Look down and try to avoid eye contact.
Yeah. It's like same thing when the pastor calls on you to ask a question. The second scene is you're riding the university shuttle with a friend who notices a Bible in your backpack. I've read the Bible before, he says. It's got some interesting stories, but people take it too seriously. Oh, man, I'm one of those people that take it too seriously, I guess. It was only written by men, after all, and men make mistakes. What do you have to say about that?
Wow, yeah.
Okay, let's look at a few things about these sometimes awkward and out-of-the-blue situations, something you can't hold to, but it's kind of what you've been waiting for, an open invitation, if you will, to present the gospel, right? That's what we want to do here. Greg Koukl says that there's a tactic to be involved here. So in each of these cases, you have an opportunity, but there still are obstacles. Leap out from the dinner table and tell them, I rebuke you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Or you're on the bus and you just throw the Bible at the person and said, if you read this, you would believe it. If you're a sheep and not a goat, you would hear his voice. Well, first of all, you must speak up quickly, right? Because the opportunity will not last long. You're at a dinner party and someone might want to change the subject for the sake of, social norms. You're on the bus. That bus is going to end. You have about 10 seconds before the door closes. What do you do?
Yeah,
what do you do?
So that's kind of an interesting, idea here. He's suggesting you only have about 10 seconds. Yeah. And, okay, why? Well, because, that's just social interaction works that way, right? Yeah. In other words, it's kind of awkward if you get longer than that and then you try to come back with that. It's as if you're forcing the issue, right? And so he wants it to be natural. Right. And so you have about 10 seconds to kind of work through whatever you're going to do.
You want to utilize the opportunity brought up immediately. You don't want to say, well, that's a really good discussion. Let's have a 4-hour coffee, 2 weeks from now, if my schedule holds true for the next
or
16
10 minutes later, you say, wait, I want to say this about that.
Right.
Well, okay, we've moved on.
Yeah. Oh, are we still talking about that? Pass the peas, please. Second, you're conflicted. You want to say something, but you're also concerned about being sensitive, keeping the peace. peace, preserving the friendship, and not looking extreme. So those are the issues that we have to deal with, at least with these two situations. But I think that kind of encompasses, like you said, a lot of our interactions. You're at work. You make mention about how you were at church, and someone walks by and just says, "Oh, I lost my faith a long time ago." Yeah. Okay. Do I have a rejoinder to that statement, that bomb that's been dropped in my lap? Yeah. So those are kind of the situations that Greg Koukl brings up for us to discuss.
Yeah, good. So Koukl then now he's going to give us a way to deal with these and give us within that 10 seconds time at least to get the ball rolling, right? So he asks us, what if there's an easy escape from the challenge that each of these situations present? A way to minimize the awkwardness and engage the other person productively and graciously. What if, wow, okay.
Doesn't sound like any conversation I'm a part of then.
He says, what if you had a plan, right, in place that would guide you with regard to the next move that you should make? Well, I'm up for that.
Yeah, I'm peaked.
And so let's look at what he does now in the book is he answers these particular challenges, right? And he gives us some idea of what he would say. And then what he's going to do is kind of analyze this to help us to understand where he's coming from and why he said what he said, right? Yeah. So the first one, this is the dinner party, right? And this 15-year-old kid, my goodness, right, blurts this stuff out in the middle of, can you imagine how embarrassing that is to the folks who are living?
Not the time and place.
Johnny, go sit down. Yeah. So notice he says, perhaps we would do something like this. He says, it's not rational to believe in God, right? There's no proof. That's what the kid said, right? Sure. And so what do you mean by God? That is, what kind of God do you reject, we might ask, right? What specifically is irrational about believing in God? Since you're concerned about proof of God's existence, what kind of evidence would you find acceptable? Right? So he's suggesting something like that might be a response that he would give, right? The second one, here's your friend and you on the, sitting and traveling together, and he notices your Bible. He says, you can't take the Bible too seriously because it was only written by men and men make mistakes. Okay. And Koukl suggests something like this. Do you have any books in your library? Were these books written by humans? Do you find any truth in them? Is there a reason you think the Bible is less truthful or reliable than other books you own? Do people always make mistakes? When they write things? Do you think that if God did exist, he would be capable of using humans to write down exactly what he wants? Why not? Or why? Right?
Yeah. That last one, I've used that one quite a bit with it's just written by humans and goat herders and whatever else, a rejoinder that is brought up with that one.
Yeah. So Koukl is suggesting that's kind of the approach that he would start with in this 10-second window. Right. Notice he's it's interesting how he does that and with these responses, I think. Okay. And I think we'll see a pattern here. Right.
So the things that you see about these responses is, first of all, he's asking questions.
Yes, lots of questions. Yeah. Right.
He's taking the statements, he's breaking them down, and he's making a question of each parts of those. Right.
So he's suggesting here by asking a question, this is not the opportunity to start preaching to somebody.
Right.
No, you ask questions.
Right. These are statements being made to you, and you're trying to get to the heart of what's being asked to you. So each of these questions is an invitation to thoughtful dialogue. Two parts of that: thoughtful and dialogue. Right. Yeah. So this isn't, again, you're standing in a pulpit and you're throwing words at the person,
or you're trying to shut them down, and make them look,
that's stupid. Why would you ever believe something like that?
Do
you have no morality?
We want dialogue with the person. We want them talking so that we can, go further with this situation. Right. Yeah.
And third, these are not idle queries. They're there is a particular purpose for each question, and that's absolutely true. The teenager at the dinner table. I mean, there's a lot of implications in there. He might want to be doing it for whatever embarrassing reason or a rebellious reason. I can't believe a 15-year-old would be rebellious in that type of situation. But there's a lot of questions to unpack there. Who's the God you're talking about? Why? Yeah, all his questions are making thought-provoking conversation returners to those. They're not accusatory. They're not they're not rude. They're not pithy little sayings to shut it down. The words of the president from the 1900s always have that pithy saying that shuts the other person up, and if I was your husband I would drink it type deal of Churchill. And so those are the three things that we can notice here. First of all, they're a question. Each question presents thoughtful dialogue, a conversation between you and that person. It's exactly what you want. Mm-hmm. It's how you not get the other person angry, and you're trying to figure out where they're coming from. There's a purpose for each of those questions. You're not just asking for the sake of asking questions. Yeah,
good.
And so chapter 3 is called the Columbo tactic. And so this is the first tactic. He calls it the queen mother of all tactics because it's so flexible and adaptable. It's easily combined with other tactics that we'll learn later, and it's simply called Columbo. And so we'll provide a clip here of who Columbo is. Yeah. Obviously, detective, old detective show, post black and white even, by Peter Falk, and he has this kind of way of asking questions. So that's cool.
Yeah, so the Columbo tactic, right? So what is the key to the Columbo tactic? Well, since it's going, it's going on the offensive, right? In an inoffensive way by using carefully selected questions to productively advance the conversation, right? So there's really kind of a couple of ways to do apologetics, right? You can have defensive apologetics where you're kind of defending the truth, you're defending the scriptures, you're defending what you believe and that sort of thing, right? And then there's also offensive, not being offensive, but offensive apologetics, right? Where you are on the offense, right? And you are taking the lead with regard to the questions and the issues that are being discussed, right? And so that's what he wants us to see here, that this is an offensive approach and not a defensive approach, and not and we're not being offensive to someone, right?
Even if we are asking questions, we're doing it for a purpose, where there's a reason for the madness.
Right, good. And so he wants us to ask questions. He wants us to ask questions to get the person to think. In fact, he says, never make a statement, at least at first, when a question will do the job. Right?
Yeah. Right. If you want to get into it, that's great. Your friends on the bus, and you can launch into, well, here's all the reasons why infallibility must be true. Let's pull out the Chicago statement. Let's go over this one by one and get through as many as it before we have to get off the bus. Yeah. But those questions do a good job, because even if you move off that path of conversation, those questions will still need to be answered by that person.
Yeah.
Those are really
remember his goal, the stone, the rock, and the shoe. Right. That's his goal. And so if you start asking questions like this, you're more likely to get a rock and a shoe, right? And get them thinking about these issues, right?
So the Columbo tactics is used. The advantages of asking these questions, as we see with Lieutenant Columbo, is it's kind of you don't really know where your main character is coming from. You don't know if he knows that he's rubbing elbows with the killer in every single episode, which I would think that, if you're the detective, just figure out who's hanging around you the most. There's your killer. Or he might know that by coming into the scene and looking at what it is and figuring it out automatically. But he wants that other person to admit, that they killed the person or they stole the jewels or whatever it might be.
He wants an airtight case. And so he kind of fences them in, right, with these various questions and maneuvers, right?
Because you want them to think about where they're coming from as well. You want to take down any issues that they might have that they haven't even thought about themselves. And so the advantage of asking these questions specifically is, first, it's a sincere question that's friendly and flattering, right? I care about this conversation. Yeah. I'm not
I care about your opinion.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Let's understand where you're coming from so that I can know where to go from here. Second, you'll get an education. Maybe that person has studied something before, and so you're going to respond to a specific item that they're going to bring up, something that you may not even know about, but also something because you didn't know about. That's something that you would have to respond to in a different way than, the problem of evil. Yeah. I know it from a free will perspective, but they're coming at it from, whatever, a different perspective might be.
And this
there is no evil.
Yeah, this is a good point, right? I mean, we don't have to know everything.
Oh,
right?
Thank goodness.
I mean, and I think it's kind of prideful to think that I have to know everything. Right. No, you can
and remember it all.
Yeah, right. That person may know some things that you don't know, and so this gives you an opportunity to learn some things, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay to learn from folks who disagree with you, right? And you might have to go back later and think through those issues and do some studying, but that's a good thing. Right. Yeah.
And so, like Lieutenant Columbo, asking those questions and possibly knowing, who the killer is, he's trying to advance using the questions. And so the third advantage to asking questions is it'll allow you to make progress on a point without being pushy. So you could do something like, what about the God of the Bible doesn't allow for him to preserve his word. With the Christian understanding that God is all powerful, all knowing, that He has the ability to preserve His word, would you say that is impossible? Can you respond to that? Something along those lines that pushes the conversation down the road of whichever question that person wants to respond to, the question that you think would best bring down their stronghold of whatever is being brought up. And so that's one of the advantages of asking questions. And finally, and most importantly, it carefully places questions that puts you in the driver's seat. Once the statement's made of, you can't trust the Bible, or, you can't even believe a God, that's so stupid. Your questions are able to move that person into a position that you want to take them. And so again, you're asking questions to legitimately know, right? You're clarifying. You're making sure that you're understanding where they're coming from. That they might think, the pantheon of the Greek gods is stupid. No one should believe in that. Oh, okay. Well, that was something completely different. We're over here having a dinner party from church. Oh, right. I was just reading, Homer's Odyssey.
So there is totally something, that, so you made an assumption there that wasn't correct. Right. Yeah.
You'll get an education from it. So they may know something more than you do, and that's great. And so you can respond to it. You're making progress to continue that conversation as you go down the line, and also you're able to steer it using those questions. Just because you're not making full-fledged responses to that person and, in premises and conclusion form for direct or indirect logic, then you're still moving that conversation forward.
Good. So questions are very powerful. They're very important. They drive really his tactical method here, asking these various questions, and we'll see that as we go.
Right.
He says, so remember, this one is called Columbo, the mother of all tactics, right? Asking these questions. He says there are three basic ways to use Columbo, this question asking approach. First, to gather information, as we've been talking about, right? And so you want to know where the person is coming from. You want to be clear in terms of what they have to say, because, again, you want to address the particular issue that they're making and not just, go off on what's called a straw man argument where you're dealing with something that they're not even talking about, right? And so the basic way to do this is to use Columbo. You're gathering information. You can use it to reverse the burden of proof, right? That is to encourage the other person to give reasons for their own views, right? So the burden of proof has to do with who should be defending their particular position. And so, again, this is, you want to be on the offensive, right? And so you reverse the burden of proof so that if they've made the statement, they're responsible to answer it, to back it up with reasons, right? And so they've made this statement, okay, fine, now you ask this question because it's on them. They're the one that made the statement, right? You don't have to jump in and try to defend and answer their particular issue. They need to answer their issue, right? Because they brought it up. So this is called reversing the burden of proof, right? You encourage the other person to give reasons for their views. This, I think, is very, very powerful. And I think oftentimes we miss this, right? Because we want to give an answer. We want to give an answer. Sometimes even before we know what the questions are, right? And so, no, we want them to give an answer for the issue that they brought up. And so, I'm kind of hammering that because I think it's really, really important, right? They need to give an answer. They're the one that brought this issue up. Thirdly, we want to lead the conversation in a specific direction. So those are 3 basic ways, he says, that we can use this Columbo approach. We want to gather information so that we understand where they're coming from. Reverse the burden of proof so that if they brought this issue up, they need to defend the issue the issue that they brought up. And then finally, lead the conversation in a specific direction. Those are 3 basic ways to use Columbo. Now, what's interesting about his book is that at the end of each chapter, and I'm not sure if we've mentioned this before, he gives a what we learned in this chapter, and it's kind of a summary.
Just turn to the end of the chapters, and you'll get the Cliff Notes version for free.
And so I think that's really helpful, and so I'd encourage folks to do that if they, when they're going through this.
Yeah, and these 3 basic ways to use Columbo: gather information, reverse the burden of proof, and lead the conversation in a specific direction. Those are the next 3 chapters that he'll be covering on the Columbo tactic because it is so important. The queen move, the queen gambit, or whatever chess terminology is really good. So we'll be kind of breaking those down as well. And I think we'll end it a little short for this one because we might put chapter 4 on its own or 4 and 5 combined together. It just depends on how much I talk and Tony listens.
So he's gonna explain to us how to use these in the next couple of chapters here. So this is kind of an introduction to his Columbo approach. This is the major thing that he wants us to understand.
Just ask questions. Anybody can do that. What do you mean by that? So with presuppositionalism, by what standard? Perfect. There's a question. There might be a useful question to do, but he's really focused on specific questions that come from those statements that someone will make, and he provides a lot more within the books, obviously, and so we're pulling out just a few of them to illustrate the concept because it's such an important concept. Obviously, because he puts it first, it's important. He views it as the most important. You can combine it with other tactics that we'll learn later in the book, and so. That's why he kind of breaks it down even more, which we'll be covering next time. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks for watching and continuing to share and subscribe and support us on Patreon. We thank our 2 Patreon subscribers that continue to support us, so we can keep the lights on for a little bit longer. and Tony still doesn't get paid, and we're appreciative of that because, sometimes he's got to go back to work and be a real professor. So we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.